Good afternoon. This is Laura DeGrush with Financial Aid Services of the Communications and Training team. And this is our State Financial Aid monthly webcast for May. So we're so happy to have you here today. And today we also have as a co-presenter our program specialist, Giselle Martinez, and she's new to our team and we're so happy to have her. And today we're going to present on a couple of very interesting and big topics. We hope that they'll be interesting for you. And moving forward for our webcast, we'll also have a couple of different additional team members presenting. So in the future, you'll hear from all sorts of different voices and perspectives. So that's what we hope to bring for you. And so we'll also have in the chat some ability to answer questions there. And as always, this will be recorded and available on our Stay Connected webpage. So without further ado, we will get started and go to our topics of discussion. And I will just go ahead and have Giselle advance that to, we can take a look here at our topics of discussion. And so our first topic will be on our program guidelines. We're so excited that our grant guidelines went out and they are available. So we'll give our updates there. We also will cover the user access annual review and the steps and instructions for that. Then we'll go over in detail our online TASFA updates. And from there, we'll cover our basic deadlines and reminders, and then we'll save time as always for questions. So I imagine we'll have some good questions this time. But now we'll go ahead and get started since we have a lot of material and we'll go right over into guidelines. So I'll turn it over to Giselle and we'll get started here.
Hi, everyone. We're going to go over the program guidelines. We've made quite a bit of changes this year. Last week, we did release the program guidelines for Texas Grant, TEOG, and TEG programs. I'll be going over the usual changes that we have made to the guidelines. We have updated the program years, the award amounts, deadline dates, and priority EFC. We have also updated the links to the program rules and statutes in the appendix. The rules and statutes that are online can change periodically, so we have created an archive copy of what we base the 22-23 guidelines off of. These links will direct you to a PDF resource. If the rules change, you can refer to the appendix in the program guidelines to see the rules that were used to create these guidelines. We have enhanced the guidelines to include a walkthrough of the CB Pass grant payment portal. We have added registration instructions, how to request funds, how to cancel a request, returning funds, and steps to making student count changes. The program guidelines provided deadlines on when to expend funds and by when to return funds, but it did not provide the steps on how to perform these steps. We have resources, but they're located in other areas of our website. So to make things easier, we included them into the program guidelines for 22-23. Another enhancement we made to the program guidelines was expanding some sections to better assist institutions in program administration. We expanded the eligibility section for Texas Grant under the military pathway based on TAC rules. We also expanded the hardship section. We do recommend that you pay close attention to these sections when you do review the program guidelines. Next, we will be going over changes that we have identified as having the biggest impact to the administration of their respective programs. Two of these changes have already been communicated with two institutions last year, but we have now added them onto the program guidelines. One of them is the selective service statement. Although the selective service statement requirement has been removed from the federal level, Texas law has not changed for students who are receiving state financial aid. To ease the administrative burden, Institutions are no longer required to collect proof of registration or exemption from students. Institutions are also not required to verify the accuracy of the statement against external databases or other resources if there is no conflicting information. And we have also provided, when we do upload the PowerPoint on our Stay Connected page, we also included the link to the memo that was communicated back in September. This was also sent last year in the same memo as a selective service update, notifying institutions of changes to the conviction restriction for the TEOG and Texas grant programs. In addition to offenses related to controlled substances, students cannot be convicted of any felony. Previously, the statement was limited only to felonies or offenses involving controlled substances. Institutions are required to revise any language to reflect this change. Institutions are not required to validate the information collected with external databases, as they do not need to, and they do not need to collect proof if there is no conflicting information. We have also added an alert box for the 3 grant programs to make institutions aware of the child support arrearages section in the Texas Family Code. Per Texas Family Code, a student who is not obligated to pay child support, who is obligated to pay child support and is more than 30 days delinquent is not eligible to receive a state-funded grant. We do understand that there may be questions on what this means or how this impacts your school, but the coordinating board does not have authority on how to implement this. Institutions determine how to best comply with the state requirement and should work with their legal counsel on questions related to this mandate. The allowable amounts for authority of transfer funds, the authority of transfer funds process have been updated to 25% of the institution's total annual program allocation, or to $60,000, whichever is less. Institutions must submit an online request by July 1st, 2022. Next, I'll be going over the user access annual review. Last week, we sent out the user access annual review in a memo to financial aid directors. For compliance and security purposes, institutions are required to verify their list of user accounts for HelmNet, CBPass, and MoveIt DMZ. We did find several inactive accounts that have not been accessed for over 12 months. We will be deleting these accounts as they pose a security risk. Institutions should only be requesting access for users that will be using these portals on a regular basis. If an account has been deleted and access is needed in the future, the Director of Financial Aid must submit a new access form. The deadline to complete this annual review is June 10. The first step in the annual user access review is we have posted a link for institutions to review a spreadsheet. So the first step would be to review the list and to determine if updates are needed. The next step, if corrections, user access form with the changes you would like to make to your institution's user accounts. This form is specific to the annual review process. Please do not use other user access forms. Our other user access form is typically emailed, but this form needs to be submitted with our online verification form. This form is to be completed by the Director of Financial Aid at your institution, and it must be signed and dated. The signature must be either an e-signature or a wet signature. We do not accept typed signatures. If there are any errors submitted, or if we have any questions regarding the form submitted, we will get back to you via email. The third step would be to complete the online verification form. On this form, you would need to indicate if the user list on the spreadsheet is correct or incorrect. If the user list is incorrect, you won't be required to upload the user access form indicating the changes you would like to be made, or you would not be able to submit the online verification form. If the user list is correct, no further action is needed, and you will be able to submit the form without uploading a file. Just a reminder that institutions should be submitting the user access form that is specific to this annual review. All submissions using the process we went over are located in a specific in an area that's specific to the annual review. By submitting the form, you are checked off a list. If you have any questions related to the annual review, you can always give us a call or send us an inquiry through our Contact Us portal. And I'll be handing the presentation off to Laura.
Yeah, very good. So many good updates here. And again, we'll have this recorded so you can go back if needed. I'll go ahead and start our presentation here on the TASFA, where we have a lot of great updates for you too. So let us proceed. Let me get this to move ahead. Here we go. So first off, we just wanted to bring to your attention that the rules that we talked about last month that we expected to go through, they are now available and up and changed so that you can find them under a Texas administrative code. So here are the main points to know. You can also find this in our memo from May 10th, but the main items to really focus on here is that the online TASFA is the sole application, and if you're an institution participating in state financial aid, you must accept the data transmitted from the online TASFA application. So this, we'll talk about the steps and what that means, but this is the online TASFA, and this data coming through, you'll have to accept the data, and you can also, and it's also in rule, have students fill out a paper copy. We'll still have the paper copy of the TASFA moving forward, so that'll always be available. In code, it's written as institutions may accept the paper TASFA, and it'll be the sole version of the paper TASFA, and it also must be accepted. And it's for cases where students might not have the ability to use technology to complete the online TASFA, so it'll be an available option. Now, another point that comes up in administrative code is that institutions can require additional documents and proof and any other additional information they may need, such as just as it was in the past, to determine financial need for an applicant. So although there's the online TASFA, institutions can still have their process for determining financial need and can require additional documentation be sent to the institution. So this would be from the applicant. The applicant would send in additional information directly to the institution. So that remains the same. So that we wanted to draw attention to. It's in Texas Administrative Code now. And so let us move on here. Let's get that going there. To more updates on the TASFA. In terms of development, we're very excited to be really refining the process. We are working on our help icons now so that we can have options to apologize for that coming through, but we will have options for a student to be able to know what to expect per each question, the help icons will really help a student work through and know what to expect and put in each field. Sometimes we know it can be very confusing with our paper copy. We had a note section, but now with the help icon sections, they can click right on the question. It'll send them right there, and it should provide a much easier experience and help so that the appropriate questions are answered and also with the right data connected to it. So we're excited about our help icons. We are in the process while developing mirroring the FAFSA as best we can so that where possible, it'll be easier for users such as counselors and assistants guiding students through the application to know what to expect. So that's why in part we're mirroring the FAFSA so that it's familiar where possible. So in following and filling out the application, a user will have the help icons available. They'll also have error validation fields. So say if the wrong sort of data is put in a field, it will be as clear as possible what to put in each field. And that will really help compared to now when a student is filling out a paper copy, there's no way really to check that in the situation. So we're excited to have the online TASFA that will really help users along the way. And so that's a bit about development. Now, we're also excited that we are in testing now. We're doing internal testing. We talked about last month starting that off, and we are working now on our internal testing. It's user acceptance testing, UAT. So that is in progress. That is helping us really work through the conditional fields, the skip logic to make sure a student is filling out the form appropriately. And then also that it's working correctly so that the student is guided through the process with the right instructions throughout the whole process, and so that they can complete the form and have it signed and go to the appropriate schools. So that is our internal testing. It's happening now, but in terms of external testing, we will be starting that and it'll be going underway in a couple of weeks and going throughout the summer. So we are partnering with our TASFA committee for external UAT, but we'll also have opportunities across the board for other forms and types of testing, and it'll be needed to have complete and a good across the board collaboration so that we can get our online TASFA as good as it can be. And so our external UAT testing will really help us make sure that we are thinking of all the different case scenarios of what will happen and how fields will work, how we'll have say an independent student or a dependent student or a male or a female or a student of a certain age, and how that information will interact for the right conditional fields, meaning how they answer each question will send them on a specific path, just like how it works on the FAFSA. So that's what we are aiming for in our intentions so that we can use some smart logic to move a student along to make the process as easy as possible and so that that information is as clear as possible. Now, in terms of how you can help us, we will have opportunities for testing, and institutions will really be able to help us quite a bit in our testing of file transmission. Now, our main vehicle for file transmission will be Move It DMZ. You most likely are familiar with it. And we will have a specific folder, a TASFA output folder where files will be transmitted to. So let's talk a little bit more about the files and the file layout. So in terms of data transmission, last month we talked about getting excited about the file layout and hoping that it would be out soon. It is now out and available, so you can find the TASFA file layout, and it's available on our program resources main page under TASFA in the TASFA section. You can also find links and information in a recent memo under Stay Connected for the file layout. And with that in mind, let's talk a bit more about the specifics. What is this file layout? Well, it is a fixed length text format. And for a lot of folks, it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? So it is a way of conveying the content, and it's a way that can be consumed easily by different vendors, and for the long-term aspect of the TASFA and the file layout, it'll be easier to automate moving forward. You'll notice that this layout style is very similar to the FAFSA record layout, the ICER. And so we mirrored that process as close as we can. And so it should be familiar if you've seen that. And it also contains a couple of different main points. Now, some of these main sections may be familiar if you fill out the financial aid database for your institution. And the difference here from that is that that is a file you create and send to us. Now here with the TASFA file layout, we are sending this to you. So it's a bit distinct, but you will see some similar formatted sections to the file layout. So you'll have your header section. This will start off the file. And you will also have your detailed applicant record. This will be the main substance of the file here. So this will detail a lot of specific information and what to expect. Now, the good thing is you don't have to create this or mimic this. It just is a way so that you can consume this, so you can digest what to expect to see in each of the positions. Because with a fixed file length, we're talking about positions and content. Now, with that, we'll delve into that a little bit more in a second. But with the transfer of this data transmission, you will get a sample file layout soon. And this is something we talked a little bit about last month, but we are working on sending samples out, an example of what you'll expect, and it'll be available and sent to your Move It DMZ TASFA output folder. So we've highlighted here an example of where it would go, and it'd be similar to, for example, what you've been doing with a net price calculator. It'll be a folder where if a student has, or an applicant has completed and submitted their application, your institution will receive that specific file. So let us delve in a little bit more here now that we've looked a bit at the basics. Let's look at the overview of what to expect. Now you can find this information in the file layout on the first page. We do a bit of an overview. We talk about the data collected and the different sections of the online TASFA. Very similar to the FAFSA, we cover sections, and we talked a little bit about this last month in April. We gave some previews of what each section will look like, but things like having an instruction section, a student section, a dependency determination section, a parent section if it's applicable, and a college section, and a signature section. So lots of different little parts. Altogether, this data is collected and transferred to the institution through Move It DMZ. Now, a little bit with this data overall, the key point is that we are only transmitting the data. We are not validating the data. So that's the key difference between the TASFA online and the FAFSA. We will not be validating the data or looking at external databases to key in different student identities or figure out any sorts of validations there. So that is something good to keep in mind. Another key point is that the application, once a student submits the application, they cannot edit or add any details to it. So the application will be locked, and not only can they not add or edit once it's submitted, but there's also not an opportunity or a space to upload documents. So that's something to keep in mind. Just like as we mentioned in rule, institutions can still ask that students or applicants send vital other proof or needed documents to the institution directly. So the only thing that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board will do is provide that data transmission. We will not be an in-between for other documents or anything like that. So that'll be good to keep in mind. That will have to go directly to the institution. Same thing with the document. Once the student submits, that application is locked. And so there won't be an ability to make corrections. The student would have to work directly with the institution so that anything could be corrected. Now, a student could log back in and add up to 10 colleges at a time if necessary, but they wouldn't be able to change their base information. So a student can't select all the possible colleges at one time. They are limited so that there's enough ease of use so that a student can select various colleges at the same time, but can't go overboard and select all colleges and universities. So they are limited in nature. They'll have to log back in a session and select more colleges after they submit. So that is all good to know, and we'll have more details on that and in further webcasts. So with the idea in mind that the THECB is just transmitting that data, it's also good to know that the THECB and the online TASFA won't be creating an expected family contribution. So that is something that the FAFSA offers. The THECB is not creating any calculations. Just like in the past, the institution will be calculating the expected family contribution or whatever that becomes as the FAFSA streamlines. Excuse me. So sorry. So one last item here with the application. And I mentioned this a little bit, but I just want to make sure it's clear that the THECB will only be sending the application to the institution that the student selected if they've completed that online application. So if they haven't completed it, the institution will not be receiving it. So there won't be any partial applications. And the institution will only be receiving the applications where the student selected that specific college. So knowing all that, let us move on and look a little bit deeper into the file format itself. And so here we are looking at the file, and you don't have to put on your nerdy glasses at all. We will try to explain as best as possible the file layout and what to expect. So in terms of the titles of the columns here, what we're looking at is, first off, we have a field number. That's referring to the document itself, to the file layout, just to give an order of, say, if you have a question on a specific thing, you can say, you know what, I'd like to better understand field 30. It's the TASFA question 25 on the online application. And what we'll give in that field is you'll have a lot of different information about its position. Now we're talking about positions because this is a fixed file format. Everything has a specific position. And for myself, I think of like the genome project and where everything has a specific position, and that helps me think about it a little bit. So with that in mind, each field will have a start and an end position, and that gives its length. And that's what we're talking about there. And that's similar to the FAFSA record layout. We'll give the field a name. That's not the full question you would see online, but it's a name just to give you a sense of what we're asking. And then the valid content is what to expect to see in that field. So it could be a multiple choice answer, it could be something that the student filled in, or it could be numeric or alphanumeric. So that's what you'll see there. If it is numeric, those are right justified, or if it's alphanumeric, it'll be left justified. So that you can keep in mind and where to expect to see it in the positions. You could think of it as positions on the bus. And the last item is the skip logic. We provided this because it could help understand what questions were filled out and why. We've built in, just like the FAFSA has built in conditional fields or skip logic. It's also sometimes called smart logic, and that will help understand why a student may or may not have had to have answered a specific question. So say, depending on a specific question, that answer, a student may be able to skip it and move forward. And this is something we did have in our paper copy. We'd say if you have answered yes in the dependency section on any of the specific questions, you might move on and have been determined independent, and you wouldn't need the parent section, just as an example. So that's some of the conditional field logic there. And let us look specifically at numeric options here. So say if we're looking at the income or tax related questions, you will see numeric positions, and those are right justified. And say if we give 9 positions, there would only, say if a student didn't make that much, of course, many may not. So say if the amount was 1,000 that they entered, in that case, you would see leading zeros before so that we can demarcate the actual amount and not confuse it with a number much greater. So that is something that you'll see. So just to say that again, the numeric positions, there will be leading zeros in cases where the number doesn't fill all of the specific positions. Another item to look for is with conditional fields, if a field is blank, and that could be because it was optional, and there aren't that many fields that are optional, but in that case, it could be blank, and it could be a conditional logic, meaning it was skipped on purpose, and that question could have been hidden versus displayed. And so in those cases, that would be shown as blank spaces to fill that position so that everything will still remain in the order to be coded that way. So I imagine that is a lot of detail right there, but let us look a little deeper into data processing overall and do a little bit of a summarizing here. In terms of the data itself, we just want to point out and make sure that it's clear that institutions are not required to be able to consume this data in an automated way in terms of being ready for our October 2022 launch. This is, this upcoming October that we'll be making our launch on the online TASFA. You don't have to be able to have an automated process lined up. So there's no need to scramble to get this ready. What we really want to do in providing this file layout is begin that conversation, and you can also begin that conversation with vendors or internal staff and administration that you might be working with, so that in the future, this could be a process that could be more automated. It could be easier to consume, especially if you receive various copies, hundreds of copies of the TASFA each year. So this will be something in time, a long-term process and conversation that we will be building as we go, and also along with the FAFSA and its process of streamlining. So this is something that will evolve over time and become easier and easier. And meanwhile, for that October launch, we'll be helping schools and walking them through receiving that data and making it possible through the Move It DMC and doing more trainings for that specific purpose. So we are excited to have this up and running and to make improvements as we go over the years. Speaking of improvements over time, we're working on additional file formats that can be available in the future. For example, having a CSV format, which might be a little easier for institutions to consume, and looking at feedback for other options as we move forward. Whereas for now, the fixed file format with the file layout is our option that we will have for now. And in terms of having a sort of mechanism for processing TASFA, we will be creating reports so that an institution can know how many applications or who or what applications they've received in a certain time frame. And so we will have reports available and create trainings and systems on that too. So we are excited about that process and that step. There's so much really that we could delve into related to the online TASFA and the file format, but that's why we'll be here for additional questions and for additional information. You can always send in a contact us or give us a call. And so with that, let us go over our last topics here, and we hope that we haven't rushed too much, and there's so much really to talk about with all of this. But let us delve into our deadlines and reminders. And so deadlines to know about. The 10-day review for preliminary allocations went out to directors. The deadline is June 6th coming up. So the preliminary allocations went out for Texas grant, educational aid exemption, work study mentorship program, the work study student mentorship program, and the Texas College work study. So those went out. If you have questions on those, please have your director contact us. And so those are, the deadline is June 6th. And just as we mentioned in our review of the user access annual review, the deadline to send in your review to see if you need to update is June 10th. And please follow the steps of not only reviewing if you need changes, but uploading those changes and submitting to us. So follow those steps and have that set by June 10th. And you can always reach out to us if you have questions. And in terms of the authority to transfer, the deadline is July 1st. So with that, please reach out if you have any questions on that detail too, because it does involve a process and there is a form involved in terms of how much or what can be transferred before July or by July 1st. In terms of items coming soon, we will have our additional program guidelines out. We typically try to have them out in batches. So right now we just have our grants out and available for the fiscal year 2023, but we will have our additional guidelines coming out very soon. And we'll have additional information on exemption and waivers coming out soon too. So that will be good to look for just so that we can stay up to date with guidance on different exemption and waivers. For further general reminders, the financial aid database FAD cycle 2 will be the first day to submit files will be June 15th coming up too. And in terms of, we just mentioned the grant guidelines, they were posted on Student Financial Aid Programs webpage under Program Resources, but our additional guidelines will be available shortly there too. So that will be good to look for as a general reminder of where to find them. And in terms of staying in contact and Up to date, our summer institutional calendar was posted, and that can be found on Stay Connected. So those are general deadlines, things coming up, and basic reminders. So in terms of reaching out for questions, we cover this fairly often, but it's always good to hear it again, and maybe with a different voice, we'll highlight something new in a different way, or it'll click differently. And so with our ways to contact us, you can train and work with students to say that we have two basic public access lines that you can reach us at. And for students that are interested in or have a college access loan, or with the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program, the TASP, or anything like that, we have our student borrowers and cosigners line at 800-242-3062. We also have our state mandated Texas Financial Aid Information Center line. This is our general public line that you can have a student or a family or anyone ask any different question that might be pertinent, and they can call 888-311-8881. We also have our staff and internal line for, or rather internal to institutions. We have a specific number that institutions can use just to reach us to ask any questions on specific state financial aid. And we don't provide this to the general public, even though it is publicly available. It's just a number that hopefully that schools can use to better reach us, and that is at 844-792-2640. And our phone lines are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and closed at lunch, 12 to 1 daily. There's also an option, you can always submit a contact us inquiry. Now, sometimes these do take a business day or two, or perhaps longer, just depending, so that we can get back to you and research the case. But it can be nice to have something written. So if you're looking for an answer in writing, this can be a very good option. If you need something more in an emergency, you can try us, and we'll try to best attend you if you give us a call on our institutional phone line. So in terms of writing a contact us inquiry, you can find a link through our Student Financial Aid Program's webpage. And when clicking and starting the contact us inquiry, make sure to put institution. That will help to know who we are addressing the message to, as it could be a student or a parent or a general public inquiry. And we also would ask that you fill out the institution with your full school name. And when sending this in, make sure to choose financial aid question, as if you put a different type of question or contact reason, it may go to a different part of our agency, and it may take a little bit to get routed back to us. In terms of the description, please be as descriptive as you can. Try to be mindful about personal information on students, and don't put full socials or anything that would be too personal to a student, but fill it out as close as you can so that we can best address your question at one go. And you can add your phone number here in case we need to follow up. A direct line would be best so that we can get you a full answer or ask a follow-up question if needed. So that is our contact us and how to fill that out. And I know we do talk about that each month, but it's good to go through. You never know if we have some new folks on the webcast today. And since we've gone through so quickly today, all our different topics, I imagine that we have a lot more questions here. I'll ask Leah and Deshay if we're doing all right on questions, or if there's anything that is yet to be covered, as we do still have some time here. Okay, it sounds like we have answered all the questions for now. Thank you so much for fielding questions as we've talked here. And again, we will still have this recorded and available on our Stay Connected website. And so you can always go back and look. And then we're also always available for questions through a call or a contact us. So I'll finish our presentation here, but we'll let the questions come through and we'll just stay available. And in case anything else comes up, we'll be here for it. Thank you again for tuning in. And I know we covered quite a lot today, but we hope that it was informative, and we'll have our June webcast coming up and available, and we'll have new speakers for that and new topics to cover. We'll most likely have the online TASFA on the presentation again, as every month is a new month to talk about it more, and it's very exciting in the process, so we'll have that available. I want to thank Giselle Martinez again for co-presenting and covering some of the bigger items with user access annual review and the program guidelines. Thanks so much, Giselle. And we're just happy to be here. So thanks again for joining. I hope you're having a good Tuesday here, and we'll hang out and see if there are any other questions that might come up.